The story opens with visceral action. 6 men dressed as Egyptian security forces storm through the ancient columns of the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut in Luxor on November 17, 1997. Gunfire echoes against 3,000-year-old stones. Tourists scream, scrambling between pillars as bullets ricochet. A Swiss family huddles behind a statue. A Japanese tour guide tries to reason with the attackers in broken Arabic. The gunmen methodically move through the temple complex, their faces calm, almost serene. 45 minutes of systematic slaughter. By the time Egyptian security forces arrive, 58 tourists lie dead among the hieroglyphics. 4 Egyptians are also killed. Blood pools on ancient limestone. The world will remember this day, but not for long. Larger atrocities will overshadow it. The question emerges: who planned this? Who orchestrated this massacre at one of Egypt's most sacred historical sites? Cut to a quiet man in Afghanistan, listening to news reports on a crackling radio, a slight smile crossing his face. This is Ayman al-Zawahiri, and this is only one chapter in his story. But how did a doctor from one of Egypt's most prestigious families become the architect of terror? The narrative rewinds to June 19, 1951, in the Giza region near Cairo. A baby boy is born into privilege and prestige. His name is Ayman al-Zawahiri. His father, Mohammed Rabie al-Zawahiri, is a pharmacology professor, respected in academic circles, methodical and disciplined. His mother comes from even more distinguished lineage. Her family includes scholars, politicians, a former president of Cairo University, and the first Secretary General of the Arab League. On his father's side, his grandfather serves as a prominent Islamic scholar and imam at the legendary Al-Azhar Mosque, one of Islam's oldest and most revered institutions. The young Ayman grows up surrounded by books, religious discussions, and the weight of expectation. He is not a rebellious child. He is quiet, studious, observant. He watches everything, absorbs everything, says little. His childhood unfolds in a Cairo that is transforming rapidly, shedding colonial influence, embracing Arab nationalism under Gamal Abdel Nasser. The story then provides essential historical context without boring the audience. Egypt has been under Ottoman rule for centuries, then became a British protectorate. Independence is recent, fragile. In 1952, when Ayman is barely a year old, a group of military officers stages a coup, bringing Nasser to power. Nasser becomes the face of Arab nationalism, promising unity, strength, dignity after years of colonial humiliation. Young Ayman hears adults discussing politics at family gatherings. They debate Nasser's policies, his confrontations with Israel, his nationalizing of the Suez Canal. But the defining moment comes in June 1967, when Ayman is 16 years old. Israel launches a preemptive strike against Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. In 6 days, Arab forces are devastated. Egypt loses the Sinai Peninsula. The defeat is catastrophic, humiliating. Nasser's promises of Arab strength crumble. People whisper in cafes that maybe secular nationalism is not the answer. Maybe the solution lies elsewhere, in returning to Islamic principles, to the faith that once made the Muslim world a superpower. Ayman is brilliant academically. He graduates high school at 15, 2 years ahead of his peers. He enters Cairo University to study medicine, following in his family's tradition of scholarship. But something has changed in him. The 1967 defeat has shaken his faith in secular government. He begins reading different texts, not just medical journals, but political and religious manifestos. He discovers the writings of Sayyid Qutb, an Islamic scholar executed by Nasser's regime in 1966. Qutb's books, particularly Milestones and In the Shade of the Quran, argue that true Islam requires jihad, that Muslim societies have fallen into jahiliyyah, a state of ignorance and paganism. Qutb condemns secular Arab governments as apostates, declares that Muslims must overthrow these regimes and establish states based purely on Sharia law. Young Ayman reads these forbidden texts late at night, his mind racing. He also reads Nasser's own writings on the Arab-Israeli conflict, studying strategies of asymmetrical warfare. He is learning from both his enemies and his ideological heroes. While still a medical student, Ayman begins attending secret meetings. Small groups of young men gather in apartments, in basements, discussing revolution. They are influenced by the Muslim Brotherhood, an organization that has been banned but continues to operate underground. One of these men is Ismail Tantawi, who becomes a mentor to Ayman. Tantawi speaks passionately about the need to overthrow Egypt's government to establish an Islamic state. Ayman listens, nods, rarely speaks, but when he does, others listen. There is something compelling about his quiet intensity, his precise logic. To his refusal to waste words, he joins a group called Tanzeen, which later evolves into Tanzeen al-Jihad, and eventually becomes known as Egyptian Islamic Jihad. These are not just discussion groups, they are planning revolution. In 1974, at age 23, Ayman graduates from Cairo University with a medical degree, achieving grades equivalent to a 2-to-1, a strong performance. He completes his mandatory military service as a medic, treating soldiers, learning military discipline and organization. He then pursues a master's degree in surgery, while simultaneously deepening his involvement in Islamist politics. His life becomes a careful balancing act. By day, he is Dr. al-Zawahiri, a courteous, soft-spoken physician. By night, he is a leader in Egyptian Islamic Jihad, recruiting members, planning operations, writing manifestos. He is meticulous about separating these two lives. He marries Aza Ahmed Nawari in 1978, a woman from a respectable family. She is devout but not politically active. She claims later that she knows nothing of his terrorist activities, that he is simply a dedicated doctor. They will have 6 children together over the years. The political situation in Egypt continues to evolve. Anwar Sadat succeeds Nasser in 1970. Initially, Islamists hope Sadat will be more sympathetic to their cause. In 1973, Egypt and Syria launch a surprise attack on Israel during Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. The war does not end in complete victory, but Egypt performs better than in 1967, and Sadat is seen as having restored some Arab dignity. Ayman, now in his early 20s, watches these developments closely. But then Sadat does the unthinkable. He begins peace negotiations with Israel. In 1978, he signs the Camp David Accords with Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin, brokered by U.S. President Jimmy Carter. In 1979, Egypt and Israel sign a formal peace treaty. Egypt recognizes Israel's right to exist. For Islamists like Ayman, this is the ultimate betrayal. How can a Muslim leader make peace with the Zionist entity that occupies Jerusalem? How can Egypt abandon the Palestinian cause? Egyptian Islamic Jihad begins planning something audacious. They will assassinate Sadat. Ayman is not the leader of the entire organization, but he is influential, respected. The planning takes months. On October 6, 1981, during a military parade in Cairo celebrating the anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, soldiers suddenly break formation, rush towards Sadat's reviewing stand and open fire. Sadat is killed along with several others. The assassins are members of Egyptian Islamic Jihad. The government responds with mass arrests. Hundreds of suspected Islamists are rounded up. Ayman is among them. He is imprisoned, interrogated, tortured. Egyptian security forces want names, want to dismantle the entire network. Under extreme duress, Ayman provides some information. He later admits in his 2001 book, Knights Under the Prophet's Banner, that he betrayed Isam al-Kamari, a fellow jihadist and military commander whom Ayman admired deeply. This betrayal haunts him for years, a rare glimpse into his psychology, his capacity for guilt. Ayman is eventually released from prison, but Egypt has become too dangerous for him. The government is cracking down hard on Islamists. He makes a decision that will change the course of his life. He will leave Egypt, at least temporarily. He will go to Afghanistan. The year is 1980 and Afghanistan is in chaos. The Soviet Union has invaded in December 1979 to prop up a communist government. Muslim fighters, called Mujahideen, are resisting with increasing effectiveness. The conflict becomes a Cold War proxy battle, with the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan funneling money and weapons to the Mujahideen. But it is also framed as a religious struggle, a jihad against godless communists occupying Muslim lands. Young men from across the Islamic world begin traveling to Afghanistan and Pakistan to join the fight. Among them is Ayman al-Zawahiri, now in his late 20s, and a wealthy young Saudi named Osama bin Laden. Ayman initially operates from Peshawar, Pakistan, a city near the Afghan border that becomes the staging ground for the Mujahideen. He works as a doctor, treating wounded fighters in makeshift clinics. The conditions are primitive, resources scarce, but Ayman is in his element. He is not a frontline fighter. His value lies in his medical skills and his organizational abilities. He meets other like-minded jihadists from Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Palestine. They share a vision of a global Islamic awakening, a return to the glorious days when Muslim empires dominated the world. In 1985, Ayman undertakes the Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca, fulfilling one of Islam's 5 pillars. During this period, he deepens his relationship with Osama bin Laden and another influential figure, Abdullah Azzam, a Palestinian scholar who is one of the leading ideologues of the Afghan jihad. Together, Ayman, Osama, and Azzam help establish Maktab al-Khidamat, also known as the Afghan Services Bureau. This organization raises funds, recruits fighters, and provides logistical support for the Mujahideen. Ayman's Egyptian Islamic Jihad becomes closely associated with this effort. Money flows in from wealthy Saudis, from Pakistani intelligence, from covert CIA programs. Thousands of foreign fighters pass through training camps. Ayman is involved in organizing these camps, teaching not just combat skills but ideology, instilling in fighters a sense of purpose, of martyrdom, of holy war. He writes extensively during this period, producing pamphlets and manifestos that are carefully smuggled into Egypt to inspire Islamists back home. His writing is clear, logical, uncompromising. He argues that jihad is not just defensive but offensive, that Muslims have a duty to fight until Islamic law governs the world. The relationship between Ayman and Osama bin Laden grows stronger. They are different in many ways. Osama is tall, charismatic, from unimaginable wealth. His family runs one of Saudi Arabia's largest construction companies. Ayman is shorter, more reserved, from intellectual rather than financial privilege. But they share a vision. They believe the Soviet-Afghan war is just the beginning, that after defeating the Soviets, the Mujahideen should turn their attention to other enemies, corrupt Muslim governments, Israel, and ultimately the United States, which they see as the puppet master behind so many of the Islamic world's problems. In the late 1980s, the Soviets begin to withdraw from Afghanistan, unable to sustain the grinding guerrilla war. By 1989, Soviet forces are gone. The Mujahideen declare victory, seeing it as proof that faith can overcome superpower military might. But the question becomes, what next? The Afghan communist government collapses in 1992, but instead of peace, Afghanistan descends into civil war as various Mujahideen factions fight each other for control. Ayman and Osama watch this chaos with frustration. This is not what they fought for. Around 1990, they formalize a new organization, building on the infrastructure of Maktab al-Qidamat. They call it al-Qaeda, the base in Arabic. Its purpose is broader than just Afghanistan. It will be a global network dedicated to jihad wherever Muslims are oppressed or Islamic law is not implemented. Ayman spends much of the early 1990s traveling between Pakistan, Afghanistan, and other locations. His family is with him at times, though the lifestyle is difficult. His wife Aza and their children endure hardship, moving frequently, living in basic conditions. Aza later insists she believes her husband is simply a doctor, serving Muslim communities, not a terrorist leader. Whether this is true or willful ignorance is unclear. The children grow up in this nomadic existence, surrounded by fighters, hearing constant talk of jihad. Ayman's focus during this period is dual. He wants to build al-Qaeda into a global force, but he also wants to overthrow the Egyptian government. Egypt is personal for him. Hosni Mubarak, who succeeded Sadat in 1981, is still in power, and Ayman sees him as another secular tyrant who must be removed. To avoid being drawn into Afghanistan's civil war, which he sees as a distraction, Ayman shifts some of his operations to Sudan and Yemen, establishing Egyptian Islamic jihad cells in these countries to support operations inside Egypt. He may also have traveled to the Balkans during the Bosnian War and to Chechnya during the conflicts there, though records are fragmentary. What is clear is that by the mid-1990s, Ayman is a key figure in the global jihadist movement, operating independently from Osama bin Laden at times, but always maintaining a close alliance. Osama has returned to Saudi Arabia after the Soviet withdrawal, but is expelled in the early 1990s for his anti-government activities. He relocates to Sudan, where Ayman visits him frequently. They deepen their plans, no longer content with regional goals. They begin to envision attacks that will strike at the heart of Western power. The first major operation that can be definitively linked to Ayman comes on November 19, 1995. A truck bomb explodes outside the Egyptian embassy in Islamabad, Pakistan. The blast kills 15 people, including 2 of the terrorists who detonated the bomb. The embassy building is severely damaged. Ayman masterminded this attack, coordinating it from afar. Osama bin Laden initially opposed attacking in Islamabad, Pakistan's capital, fearing it would provoke the Pakistani government to crack down on jihadists who had long used Pakistan as a safe haven. But Ayman proceeds anyway, and his fears prove unfounded. Pakistan tolerates the jihadists for years to come, seeing them as useful proxies in regional politics, particularly regarding India and Kashmir. But Ayman's primary focus remains Egypt. He orchestrates a campaign of terror designed to cripple Egypt's tourism industry, one of the country's main sources of income. If Egypt's economy collapses, perhaps the people will rise up against Mubarak. Attacks occur at the Cairo Museum, at the Khan el-Khalili Bazaar, at tourist sites in Upper Egypt. Foreigners are killed, Egyptians are killed. The Egyptian government responds with brutal crackdowns, torturing suspects, imprisoning thousands. Ayman is far away, safe in Afghanistan or Pakistan, directing operations through intermediaries, through coded messages, through couriers who carry his instructions across borders. He is meticulous, paranoid about security, trusting very few people completely. Then comes the Luxor Massacre, the opening scene of this story. November 17th. 1997. Ayman's operatives, trained and indoctrinated, attack the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut, slaughtering 58 tourists and 4 Egyptians over 45 minutes. The world is horrified. Egypt's tourism industry is devastated. But the backlash is severe. International pressure on Egypt increases. Domestically, many Egyptians, even those sympathetic to Islamist causes, are appalled by the massacre of unarmed tourists. Egyptian Islamic Jihad's support within Egypt erodes. Ayman has overplayed his hand. The Egyptian government intensifies its counter-terrorism efforts. In 1999, a mass trial is held in Cairo, known as the Trial of the Returnees from Albania. 107 men, mostly members of Egyptian Islamic Jihad, are tried on terrorism charges related to the Luxor massacre and other plots. Ayman is tried in absentia and sentenced to death if he is ever captured. He will never set foot in Egypt again. During this period, there are also assassination attempts against Hosni Mubarak himself. In 1995, while Mubarak is visiting Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, gunmen attack his motorcade. Mubarak survives. The attack is linked to Egyptian Islamic Jihad, possibly orchestrated by Ayman. There are unconfirmed reports of another assassination attempt in Port Said in 1999. Ayman's relentless campaign against the Egyptian government has made him one of the most wanted men in the world, but he remains elusive, hidden in the mountains and deserts of Afghanistan and Pakistan, protected by the Taliban and by layers of security, constantly moving, never staying in one place for long. As the 1990s progress, Ayman and Osama bin Laden formalize their alliance into something even more ambitious. In 1998, they established the World Islamic Front for the jihad against Jews and Crusaders. This is not just about Egypt or even the broader Middle East. This is about a global war. They explicitly target Israel and the United States, framing modern jihad in the language of historical Islamic struggles, invoking Saladin's battles against the Crusaders. Ayman has fully transitioned from an Egyptian nationalist focused on overthrowing Mubarak to a global jihadist focused on confronting what he sees as a worldwide conspiracy against Islam. The manifesto they release declares that killing Americans and their allies, both civilian and military, is an individual duty for every Muslim who can do it, in any country in which it is possible. This is a declaration of total war. On the morning of August 7th, 1998, nearly simultaneous truck bombs detonate outside the U.S. embassies in Nairobi, Kenya, and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. The Nairobi blast is devastating. The embassy is located in a busy part of the city. The explosion kills 213 people, including 12 Americans, and injures more than 4,000. Most of the victims are Kenyan civilians who happen to be nearby. The Dar es Salaam attack is less deadly, but still kills 11 people and injures 85. These are the first major al-Qaeda attacks explicitly targeting the United States. The scale, the coordination, the audacity shock the world. Who are these people? How did they plan and execute such complex operations in two different countries on the same day? American intelligence agencies scramble to investigate. Oh, they have been tracking Osama bin Laden for years, but have underestimated him, seeing him as a financier more than an operational leader. Now it is clear that al-Qaeda is not just a ragtag group of religious fanatics, but a sophisticated international terror network. Ayman al-Zawahiri's name surfaces in the investigations. He is identified as bin Laden's deputy, as a key strategist, as someone with operational control over Egyptian Islamic jihad cells that are now integrated into al-Qaeda. The FBI places both Osama and Ayman on its most wanted terrorists list. Rewards are offered for information leading to their capture. Millions of dollars for Osama, nearly as much for Ayman. But the two men are untouchable. By the late 1990s, the Taliban control most of Afghanistan. The Taliban, a fundamentalist Islamic movement that emerged from the chaos of Afghanistan's civil war, have given Osama and Ayman sanctuary. In fact, the Taliban grant them Afghan citizenship shortly before September 11th, 2001, a symbolic gesture of solidarity. Osama and Ayman live openly in Kabul and Kandahar, though they move frequently for security. They are protected by layers of bodyguards, by Taliban fighters, by the rugged terrain of Afghanistan. American cruise missile strikes in August 1998, targeting al-Qaeda training camps in retaliation for the embassy bombings, miss Osama and Ayman, but kill some of their fighters. The strikes do little to degrade al-Qaeda's capabilities. During this period, Ayman is deeply involved in planning even larger operations. A man named Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, a Pakistani terrorist with his own network, approaches Osama in 1996 with a bold proposal: hijack commercial airliners and crash them into symbolic American targets. The initial plan is even more ambitious, involving 10 planes and targets in both the United States and Asia. Osama is intrigued but cautious. He takes time to consider. By 1999, he accepts the proposal but scales it down, focusing on 4 planes and symbolic targets in the United States. The World Trade Center towers in New York City, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and either the White House or the Capitol building. Ayman is consulted throughout the planning process. His analytical mind, his understanding of asymmetric warfare, his patience with complex logistics make him invaluable. They select operatives carefully, mostly Saudis and Egyptians who can blend in, who speak some English, who can train to fly commercial jets. The operation is given the code name, the Planes Operation, within al-Qaeda. The planning takes years. Operatives are sent to the United States, where they enroll in flight schools, learning to pilot large aircraft but showing no interest in learning how to land them, which arouses some suspicion but not enough to trigger a comprehensive investigation. They live ordinary lives, renting apartments, going to gyms, blending into American society. Meanwhile, Ayman and Osama coordinate from Afghanistan, communicating through couriers, through encrypted messages, through trusted intermediaries. They know American intelligence is watching, so they are meticulous about operational security. They do not use phones or email for sensitive communications. They trust almost no one outside their inner circle. Ayman's family life during this period is difficult. His wife, Aza, and their children endure the hardships of life in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. They live in modest houses, always ready to move at a moment's notice. The children receive religious education, but little else. They are raised to believe their father is a holy warrior, a defender of Islam, a man chosen by God for a great mission. Whether they fully understand what that mission entails is unclear. Aza, by all accounts, remains loyal, devoted, raising the children in difficult circumstances without complaint, at least publicly. She is a devout Muslim who believes in her husband's cause, or at least believes he is doing what he thinks is right. As the year 2001 begins, final preparations for the plane's operation are underway. The operatives in the United States are ready. The date is set, September 11th, 2001. The targets are confirmed. The Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and one more target, either the White House or Capitol, to be decided by the hijackers. Ayman and Osama know this will change everything. This will not be an attack on an embassy in Africa or a military barracks in the Middle East. This will strike the American homeland, kill thousands, and demonstrate that al-Qaeda can reach anywhere, can inflict catastrophic damage even on the world's most powerful nation. They record videos to be released after the attacks, taking credit, justifying the operation in religious terms, declaring war on America and its allies. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, 19 al-Qaeda operatives board 4 commercial flights. At approximately 8:46 a.m. Eastern Time, American Airlines Flight 11 crashes into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 crashes into the South Tower. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashes into the Pentagon. At 10:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93, whose passengers fought back against the hijackers, crashes into a field in Pennsylvania, killing everyone on board but failing to reach its intended target in Washington, D.C. The South Tower collapses at 9:59 a.m. The North Tower collapses at 10:28 a.m. In total, 2,977 people are killed, not including the 19 hijackers. It is the deadliest terrorist attack in human history. The world watches in horror and disbelief. How is this possible? How did they do this? Within hours, intelligence agencies identify al-Qaeda as the responsible party. Osama bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri become the most wanted men on the planet. The FBI raises the reward for Osama to $25 million. Ayman is not far behind. The attacks dominate news coverage for weeks, for months, for years. They reshape global politics, trigger wars, change the way people think about security, about terrorism, about Islam. For Ayman, watching from Afghanistan, this is a moment of triumph. He has helped plan and execute the most devastating attack in history. But he also knows what is coming. The United States will respond with overwhelming force. Afghanistan will be invaded. The Taliban will fall. al-Qaeda will be scattered. He and Osama will spend the rest of their lives on the run. The United States responds swiftly. President George W. Bush declares a global war on terror. He issues an ultimatum to the Taliban. Hand over Osama bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri and shut down al-Qaeda training camps or face invasion. The Taliban, led by Mullah Muhammad Omar, refuse. They offer to try Osama in an Islamic court or hand him over to a third country, but they will not extradite him to the United States. Bush rejects these offers. On October 7, 2001, less than a month after 9/11, the United States and the United Kingdom launch Operation Enduring Freedom. American and British aircraft bomb Taliban positions and al-Qaeda camps. Special forces and CIA operatives coordinate with the Northern Alliance, a coalition of Afghan militias opposed to the Taliban. The Taliban's defenses crumble quickly. By mid-November, Kabul falls. By early December, the Taliban have lost control of most of Afghanistan, here retreating into mountainous regions near the Pakistani border. Osama bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri flee to the Tora Bora region, a rugged cave-riddled area in eastern Afghanistan near the border with Pakistan. In December 2001, American and Allied forces launched the Battle of Tora Bora, attempting to kill or capture the al-Qaeda leadership. Heavy bombing and ground assaults target the caves and tunnels where Osama and Ayman are believed to be hiding. But the operation is not fully resourced. Afghan militias are hired to block escape routes, but they are unreliable, some even taking bribes to let al-Qaeda fighters slip through. In the chaos, Osama and Ayman escape across the border into Pakistan. The American military is criticized for not deploying enough U.S. troops to seal the area, but the moment is lost. The two most wanted men in the world have vanished into the tribal areas of Pakistan, regions where the Pakistani government has limited control, where loyalty to Islamabad is weak, where al-Qaeda and the Taliban find sanctuary among sympathetic tribes. Around this time, Ayman's wife, Aza, and two of their children are killed in a U.S. airstrike on a suspected al-Qaeda safe house in Afghanistan. The details are murky, the exact date uncertain, likely late 2001. Ayman is not present during the strike, having left earlier. Aza dies along with their daughters. For Ayman, this is a profound personal loss, though he rarely speaks of it publicly. He later remarries, taking Umayma Hassan as his wife. Umayma is a staunch Islamist supporter, reportedly more politically active and vocal than Aza. Ayman may have married additional women over the years, as Islamic law permits up to 4 wives, but details are scarce due to his clandestine lifestyle. In 2001, Ayman publishes Knights Under the Prophet's Banner, a book that serves as both autobiography and manifesto. In it, he outlines al-Qaeda's ideology, justifies 9/11, and declares war on Israel, the United States, and Russia, the latter due to Russian actions in Chechnya. The book also reveals personal details, including his guilt over betraying Isam al-Qamari under torture in 1981. This rare moment of vulnerability offers insight into Ayman's psychology. He is capable of guilt, of regret, of loyalty to comrades, even as he orchestrates mass murder. He sees himself as a soldier in a holy war, not a terrorist but a defender of Islam against overwhelming enemies. So whether this self-perception is genuine or self-serving is debatable, but it is the framework through which he understands his actions. Over the following years, Ayman and Osama settle into a life on the run. They move frequently between safe houses in Pakistan's tribal areas, protected by sympathetic locals, by Taliban remnants, by layers of security. Communication with the outside world is difficult. They record videos and audio messages, which are smuggled out and released to media outlets, particularly the Arabic satellite channel Al Jazeera. These messages serve multiple purposes. They reassure al-Qaeda supporters that the leadership is still alive and operational. They claim credit for attacks. They inspire new recruits, and they taunt Western governments. Ayman appears in many of these videos, often alongside Osama, sometimes alone. He is less charismatic than Osama, but more articulate, more precise. He speaks in classical Arabic, quoting the Quran and Hadith, framing al-Qaeda's war in religious terms. In 2004, Osama bin Laden officially names Ayman al-Zawahiri as his deputy, formalizing what had been understood informally for years. Ayman is now the second most powerful figure in al-Qaeda, involved in strategic decisions, in approving major operations, in managing the network's sprawling infrastructure. Al-Qaeda is no longer just an organization but a brand. Affiliated groups in Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, North Africa, and Southeast Asia pledge allegiance to Osama and operate under the al-Qaeda banner, though they often have significant operational independence. Seeing one of the most controversial attacks linked to al-Qaeda during this period is the July 7, 2005 bombing of the London Underground and a bus known as the 7/7 attacks. 4 suicide bombers, all British citizens, detonate explosives during morning rush hour, killing 52 people and injuring hundreds. Ayman later claims responsibility on behalf of al-Qaeda, though the extent of al-Qaeda's direct involvement is debated. The bombers were inspired by al-Qaeda's ideology and may have received training in Pakistan, but whether the attacks were planned and directed by the central leadership or carried out by self-radicalized individuals remains unclear. Regardless, Ayman's claim of responsibility associates al-Qaeda with the attack in the public mind. Western intelligence agencies are relentlessly hunting Ayman and Osama. Drone strikes become a primary tool, particularly in Pakistan. In 2008, a drone strike nearly kills Ayman. He is wounded but survives, escaping once again. The strikes kill many of his associates, forcing him to become even more cautious, even more isolated. He rarely uses electronic communications, relying on couriers to carry messages. He moves between safe houses, sometimes staying in one place for only a few days before moving again. He trusts almost no one outside his immediate family and a few longtime associates. Paranoia is justified. Betrayal is common. Informants, bribed or coerced, provide tips to American and Pakistani intelligence, but Ayman remains elusive. The dynamics of global jihadism evolved during this period. The U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003 creates a new front. an al-Qaeda affiliate, initially led by Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, emerges in Iraq fighting American forces and Shiite Iraqis with extreme brutality. Zarqawi's group eventually becomes ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, though that transformation happens years later. Ayman communicates with these affiliates, offering guidance, sometimes criticizing their tactics when they are too brutal and alienate potential supporters. He understands that indiscriminate violence can backfire, though he himself has orchestrated plenty of indiscriminate violence over the years. The tension between central al-Qaeda leadership and regional affiliates is ongoing, a struggle between maintaining ideological purity and allowing operational flexibility. On May 2, 2011, a defining moment occurs. U.S. Navy SEALs, acting on intelligence gathered over years, raid a compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, and kill Osama bin Laden. The operation, codenamed Neptune Spear, is a major blow to al-Qaeda. Osama had been the face of the organization, the founder, the charismatic leader. His death is celebrated in the United States and many other countries. Ayman is now the sole leader of al-Qaeda. Within days, he releases a video promising to continue Osama's mission, vowing revenge against the United States. But the truth is that al-Qaeda is weakening. The drone campaign has killed many senior leaders. Affiliates are increasingly acting independently. The Arab Spring, beginning in late 2010, creates new political dynamics in the Middle East, with some Islamist movements choosing political participation over armed jihad, at least temporarily. Ayman's leadership style is different from Osama's. Sure, he is less charismatic, more bureaucratic, more focused on ideology than inspiration. Some within al-Qaeda and affiliated groups see him as too rigid, too focused on Egypt, even when regional circumstances have changed. His public appearances, released via video, become less frequent. He looks older, grayer, more tired. The relentless pressure of being hunted, of constantly moving, of losing comrades and family members is taking its toll. Yet he persists, driven by ideology, by a sense of mission, perhaps by an inability to imagine any other life. In 2014, Ayman announces the creation of al-Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent, a new branch focused on India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. This is partly a response to the rise of Hindu nationalism in India under the BJP and Narendra Modi, and partly an attempt to remain relevant as ISIS steals global attention. The new branch conducts some attacks, but it does not achieve the prominence Ayman hopes for. The same year, ISIS declares a caliphate in parts of Iraq and Syria, and its leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, claims to be the caliph of all Muslims. This is a direct challenge to al-Qaeda. Ayman condemns ISIS publicly, criticizing its excessive brutality, particularly against fellow Muslims, and its rejection of al-Qaeda's authority. But ISIS is ascendant, attracting foreign fighters, dominating headlines, executing spectacular propaganda campaigns. For the first time, Ayman and al-Qaeda are overshadowed by a rival jihadist organization. By the mid-2000s, Ayman al-Zawahiri is a shadow of his former self in terms of global influence. ISIS controls significant territory, governs cities, imposes its brutal interpretation of Sharia law, and produces slick propaganda videos that attract tens of thousands of foreign fighters. Al-Qaeda, under Ayman's leadership, looks old-fashioned, cautious, irrelevant. Ayman publicly disavows ISIS, argues that its tactics are counterproductive, that mass beheadings and the burning of prisoners alienate potential supporters, that declaring a caliphate prematurely is a strategic mistake. But his criticisms seem more like the complaints of a has-been than the warnings of a respected leader. Younger jihadists flock to ISIS, seeing it as more action-oriented, more willing to fight, more successful. Ayman's public appearances diminish notably after 2014. He releases a video in 2015, then goes silent for nearly a year, sparking rumors that he has been killed. When he resurfaces, he looks older, frailer. The long years on the run, the constant stress, the losses, have aged him. His once dark hair is now mostly gray. He wears glasses, speaks slowly. He resurfaced in 2018 and 2019 with videos condemning the United States and its allies in the Middle East, particularly Saudi Arabia, which he accuses of betraying the Muslim cause by allying with America and normalizing relations with Israel. But these videos generate little international attention. The media is focused on ISIS, on the Syrian civil war, on refugee crises, on other global events. The global focus on jihadist terrorism begins to wane somewhat by the early 2020s, not because the threat has disappeared, but because other crises dominate. The COVID-19 pandemic, political polarization in Western democracies, the rise of China, climate change, and in 2022, say Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Al-Qaeda and ISIS still exist, still carry out attacks, particularly in Africa and the Middle East, but they are no longer the urgent existential threats they once seemed. Ayman continues to lead Al-Qaeda, but from an increasingly marginal position. In September 2021, on the 20th anniversary of 9/11, Ayman releases a video. He looks old, tired, but defiant. He praises the attacks, justifies them, declares that the war against America and its allies will continue. But there is something odd about the video. Some analysts notice that he makes no reference to any events after early 2021. There is speculation that the video was recorded months earlier, that perhaps Ayman is already dead, and Al-Qaeda is trying to maintain the illusion that he is alive to preserve morale and continuity. The debate is unresolved for months. Then, on July 31st, 2022, the truth is revealed. Ayman al-Zawahiri is killed in a CIA drone strike in Kabul, Afghanistan. After the Taliban retook control of Afghanistan in August 2021, following the chaotic U.S. withdrawal, Ayman apparently felt safe enough to return. He settles in a safe house in the Sherpur neighborhood of Kabul, a relatively upscale area. American intelligence, using a combination of signals, intelligence, human sources, and surveillance, identifies his location. They observe him over weeks, noting his habits. He often sits on the balcony of the house in the early morning, a seemingly minor detail that proves fatal. On the morning of July 31st, a CIA drone fires 2 Hellfire missiles at the balcony. Ayman is killed instantly. He is 71 years old. No one else in the house is harmed. The missiles are designed for precision strikes. The operation is approved by President Joe Biden, who announces the successful strike to the American public. There is some satisfaction in the announcement, a sense of justice delayed but not denied, but the response is muted compared to the reaction to Osama bin Laden's death in 2011. The world has moved on. Al-Qaeda is no longer the omnipresent threat it once was, Ayman's death is noted, discussed briefly, then fades from the headlines as other news dominates. Ongoing war in Ukraine, economic concerns, political crises in various countries. Al-Qaeda does not immediately name a successor. Saif al-Adil, whose real name is Mohammed Salah al-Din al-Halim Zaidan, is considered the de facto leader. He is an Egyptian like Ayman, a former military officer, experienced in operations and strategy. But he does not have Ayman's ideological credentials or the relationship with Osama that gave Ayman legitimacy. Al-Qaeda's future is uncertain. As the story closes, it reflects on Ayman al-Zawahiri's life and legacy. Born into one of Egypt's most prestigious families, raised in privilege and scholarship, he could have had a comfortable, respectable life as a doctor, a professor, a scholar. Instead, he chose a path of violence, driven by a toxic mix of religious ideology, political grievance, personal ambition, and perhaps a deep-seated need for significance. He played a central role in some of the most devastating terrorist attacks in history, including 9/11, which killed nearly 3,000 people and reshaped the world. He spent decades on the run, constantly hunted, losing family members, watching his organization decline, eclipsed by newer, more brutal groups. He was a man of contradictions, a doctor who orchestrated mass murder, a scholar who rejected intellectual debate in favor of violence, a man who felt guilt over betraying a comrade but showed no public remorse for killing thousands of innocents. The final scene returns to the Luxor massacre, the attack that opened the story. The blood on ancient stones, the screams echoing among hieroglyphics, the systematic slaughter. Was Ayman the true mastermind behind Al-Qaeda, the brains behind Osama's charisma, or was he merely a lieutenant who inherited a role too large for him? The question is posed directly to the audience. At this point, a call to action is woven into the narrative. If you found this story compelling, if it gave you new insights into one of the most consequential figures of the modern era, consider subscribing to this channel, liking the video, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Do you see Ayman al-Zawahiri as the architect of Al-Qaeda's global jihad, or was he always in Osama bin Laden's shadow? Let us know what you think. The story closes with a final reflection. Islamist terrorism has not disappeared. Al-Qaeda remains active in parts of Africa, particularly the Horn of Africa and Sudan, and in Yemen. The Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan provides a permissive environment for jihadists. Other groups like Boko Haram continue to destabilize regions. ISIS, though territorially defeated in Iraq and Syria, persists as an insurgency and has affiliates in Africa and Asia. The Syrian civil war, still unresolved, could provide opportunities for ISIS to re-emerge. The ideology that drove Ayman al-Zawahiri, that justified the Luxor massacre and 9/11 and countless other atrocities, has not been defeated. It mutates, adapts, finds new adherents. The story of Ayman al-Zawahiri is not just a historical account, but a cautionary tale about the enduring power of extremism, the consequences of political grievance channeled into violence, and the difficulty of eradicating an ideology rooted in a distorted interpretation of faith. The final words are a question left hanging. What comes next?